This is an MJA Inc. Investigations warning. This MJA podcast is rated E for explicit. Some details of a case and language used on this podcast might be upsetting to some of our listeners. Listeners' discretion is advised. And for those who are still with us, kick back and enjoy the show. When there is an ending, there was a beginning. Every victim has a picture to paint. Every true crime has its time and place. Please join our MJ podcast, the series Deep into the Woods, Missing Persons, Unsolved Crimes, and the Does. Welcome to our MJ podcast. This series, Children Who Never Made It Home. Episode 7, Part 7, 8 Missing Children. Our children have been hunted prey starting with the numbers climbing in 1950. Since that time, if you check the numbers of victims being children, you will see these numbers have went up each year. Let's just face the true, cold, hard facts. It has become an epidemic that can't be contained. As a nation, we can't protect our children. It's the most hideous nightmare you can live is when a child goes missing or a child is murdered. Our laws concerning child predators are very flawed. It's just a known fact. There is case after case where the monster preying on our children shouldn't have been walking the streets because of their previous actions and convictions. But our nation laws states you can only hold these evil monsters for a set amount of years that is established by lawmakers. As a nation, we need to raise the set amount of years for the crimes against our children. An example is, if a certain crime carries 10 to 20 years, you make it 20 to 40 years. Yes, double down on each set amount of years in prison for each crime. In my opinion, anyone convicted of murdering a child should spend the rest of their life in prison, no parole. Then there is the other epidemic, which is child trafficking. As an investigator for 45 years, I have been involved in investigating child trafficking, including interviewing child victims, which I am educated to do so. What most people don't understand, being an investigator working on such cases, sometimes you have to watch any videos that might have been recovered of the child victims. You're not human if it doesn't affect you and change your view how these child predators should be handled. This is why I know I could never be a judge sentencing someone who was convicted of a crime against a child. Let's say the crime carries 20 to 40 years. If I was a judge, I would give them the set amount of 40 years. I'm just saying, as a nation, we have to do better in protecting our children. Good evening, my name is Mark, and I will be your host for tonight's show. Joining me later will be our co-host, Olivia. On this episode, Olivia and I will profile 8 missing children cases. We are coming to you from Morrisonville, New York. Children who never made it home. Case 1. It was on June 18, 1959 is when 4-year-old Daniel Barter, a white male, vanished without a trace from Lillian, Alabama. Case 2. It was on February 7, 1999 is when 9-year-old Sarah Skyba, a white female, vanished without a trace from Grandy, Colorado. Case 3. It was on June 12, 1991 is when 12-year-old James A. Hendrickson, a white male, disappeared without a trace from Tucson, Arizona. Case 4. It was on July 16, 1952 is when 10-year-old Connie Christine Smith, a white female, went missing from Salisbury, Connecticut. Case 5. It was on January 23, 1964 is when 3-year-old Todd Eugene Collette, a white male, disappeared without a trace from Santa Barbara, California. Case 6. It was on June 10, 1975 is when 12-year-old Susan Basil, a white female, vanished without a trace from Port Orange, Florida. Case 7. It was on August 25, 1989 is when 12-year-old Danny Randall Jackson, a white male, went missing from Gainesville, Florida. Case 8. It was on August 15, 1999 is when 11-year-old Teresa Melissa Dean, a white female, vanished without a trace from Macon, Georgia. Let's take a pause for the cause, and when we return, Olivia will be on the line. Be back in a moment.
I've been searching in the dark, trusting every clue I found. But the truth has not been told, 'cause every corner of these woods is hollow. I can't see in the dark.
Welcome to our MJA podcast, this series, Children Who Never Made It Home. Episode 7, Part 7, 8 Missing Children. We have Olivia on the line. How are you doing on this fine evening?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm just fine. A little chilly up here, but it's okay.
Well, it's very hot down here.
Okay, are you ready to dig into these unsolved mysteries?
Yeah.
Okay. Children who never made it home. Case 1. Welcome to Lillian, Alabama. It was on June 18th, 1959, is when 4-year-old Daniel Barter, a white male, vanished without a trace from Lillian, Alabama. The 4-year-old Barter was last seen playing near the banks of Perdido Bay. This is where Barter's parents, 3 brothers, and an uncle and 2 cousins were camping. Around 9:45 a.m., while the family was preparing equipment for a fishing trip, they realized 4-year-old Danny was gone. About 15 minutes had passed since the brothers had last seen the 4-year-old Barter near the campsite's small beach. The 4-year-old Barter had spent the night in his uncle's car with the other children, and he was barefoot and still wearing the gray boxer shorts he had slept in. The search for 4-year-old Danny Barter started at the beach and ended up a few miles north of US 98 Bridge into Florida. Danny Barter didn't like the water, and there was no footprints leading into the bay. Bloodhounds repeatedly tracked Danny's scent to the same spot on a nearby road. This is where a knee-high soda bottle was found, which was like the one that 4-year-old Danny had been drinking. On the morning before Danny's disappearance, his mother drove him and his brother to a store, leaving the boys in the car. While she was gone, a man drove next to the Barter's car and stared at the boys for a while without speaking to them, and then drove away. Daniel's brother told the mother about it when she returned to the car. The 4-year-old Danny Barter's case was reopened nearly 50 years after his disappearance. Many of the original investigative files have since been lost or destroyed during the intervening decades. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Baldwin County Sheriff's Office at 251-937-0202.
Case 2. Welcome to Westminster, Colorado. It was on February 7th, 1999, when 9-year-old Sarah Ariel Skiba, a white female, vanished without a trace from Grandy, Colorado. 9-year-old Sarah was traveling with her father and one of his employees to do a moving job in Morrison, Colorado. Sarah Skiba's parents are divorced, and 9-year-old Sarah was visiting her father for a scheduled visitation during the weekend of February 7th, 1999. Sarah Skiba's mother reported her daughter as a missing child to authorities when she failed to return home from her father's visitation. Investigators initially believed that Sarah's father had abducted her with possible assistance from the father's employee. A warrant was issued for Sarah's father. Arrest and authorities thought the disappearances were related to a possible custody battle. The investigation changed direction almost 3 weeks later. This is when the moving van was discovered by Sarah's mother and a friend at the moving company lot in Westminster, Colorado. They found the moving truck parked riddled with bullet holes. Blood and a bloody piece of scalp was also found. The DNA test revealed that blood found in a moving van belonged to 9-year-old Sarah Skiba and her father. The part of the scalp found also belonged to Sarah's father. There was additional hair on the truck's fender, and shell casings and blood were found in the parking lot as well. The employee, who has not been seen since, was the father of the son and daughter the same age as Sarah. Investigators learned that the truck had left the lot at about 8 p.m. and was returned about midnight. Police theorized the three were killed at the lot and the truck was used to dispose of their bodies. The truck was then driven back to the lot and parked. Investigators believe Sarah and her father and his employee were ambushed and killed when they returned the truck to the parking lot. They believe Sarah's father was a target and his daughter and employee were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. The employee's car was found parked in a lot, but Sarah's father's vehicle was located in Denver, Colorado. Investigators dredged several lakes around the Denver, Colorado area in an effort to locate 9-year-old Sarah Skiba and her father and his employee's remains. No evidence was produced during the searches. No trace of the three has ever been found. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Westminster Police Department at Sergeant Tim Clark at 303-658-4255.
Case 3. Welcome to Tucson, Arizona. It was on June 12, 1991, is when 12-year-old James A. Hendrickson, a white male, disappeared without a trace from Tucson, Arizona. Hendrickson disappeared after he left his Tucson home to spend the night at the home of his babysitter's cousin, who was a middle-aged man. This was while the 12-year-old Hendrickson's mother and aunt were out of town. When it was realized that the 12-year-old Hendrickson was missing, detectives talked to the middle-aged man. The man told them that Hendrickson left his home saying he was going to walk home, which was about a mile away. The 12-year-old Hendrickson was last seen about 8 p.m. at a Circle K near North Oracle and West Grand Roads. 12-year-old James A. Hendrickson didn't have a history of running away from his home. The possibility that Hendrickson is a runaway is slim, according to the family, because there was not any problems at the home. Foul play is suspected in James A. Hendrickson's disappearance. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Tucson Police Department at 520-791-4444.
Case 4. Welcome to Salisbury, Connecticut. It was on July 16, 1952, when 10-year-old Connie Christine Smith, a white female, went missing from Salisbury, Connecticut. Connie Smith resided in Wyoming at the time of her disappearance, where her grandfather was the governor of the state. The 10-year-old Smith was spending part of the summer of 1952 at Camp Sloan in Salisbury, Connecticut. On July 16, 1952, during the morning, Connie Smith had an altercation with a group of female campers, and her nose was bloodied from the incident. The 10-year-old Connie Smith told her tent mates that she was skipping breakfast that morning and was walking to the camp dispensary to return an ice pack. The 10-year-old Smith ended up leaving the ice pack in her tent, and she never went to the dispensary. Instead, Connie Smith walked away from the camp and down Indian Mountain Road. Witnesses saw 10-year-old Connie Smith picking daisies along the roadside, and Smith asked several people how she could get to Lakeville, Connecticut, about a half a mile from Camp Sloan. The 10-year-old Smith had her son out and was attempting to hitchhike, perhaps to Lakeville. Connie Smith was last seen walking on U.S. Route 44 in Salisbury, Connecticut, later in the day. 10-year-old Smith was apparently homesick, and with only 1 week left of her stay at Camp Sloan, Smith decided to leave the camp. Connie Smith didn't have any money or extra clothes with her. One theory is that Smith attempted to run away from camp and go to one of her parents who were divorced. Either Smith's parents saw or heard from their daughter after her disappearance. Smith's mother last saw her daughter when she visited her at camp 2 days before her disappearance. The 10-year-old Smith was in good spirits at the time and even asked for permission to stay at the camp longer. The Smith didn't seem to mind what her mother had to tell her now. 10-year-old Connie Smith was never heard from again. An extensive search did not produce any clues as to Connie Smith's whereabouts. There have been many suspects in the 10-year-old Smith's disappearance throughout the years. One of the possible suspects is William Henry Redmond, a former carnival worker. Redmond was charged with murdering an 8-year-old girl in 1951, 1 year prior to Connie's disappearance. In the 1980s, Redmond allegedly told another prison inmate he had killed 4 people during his lifetime. Redmond was eventually sent back to his home state of Nebraska when it was determined that he was too ill to stand trial for the 1951 murder. Redmond died in 1992. Authorities have been unable to determine if Redmond was in the Connecticut area in 1952 at the time of Connie Smith's disappearance. Redmond passed a polygraph test concerning Connie Smith's case. Redmond is still considered a possible suspect in the 1951 disappearance of Beverly Potts from Ohio. No one has been charged in Smith's case. It remains unsolved. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Connecticut State Police, Detective Michael Downs, at 860-626-7975.
Okay, let's take a pause for the cause, and when we return, we will profile 4 more child victims. Be back in a moment.
Searching in the dark, trusting every clue I found. But the truth has not been told. There's every corner of these woods is hollow. I can't see the dark.
Welcome back to our MJ podcast. This series, Children Who Never Made It Home, Episode 7, Part 7, 8 Missing Children. Case 5. Welcome to Santa Barbara, California. It was on January 23, 1964, is when 3-year-old Todd Eugene Collette, a white male, disappeared without a trace from Santa Barbara, California. On January 23, 1964, 3-year-old Todd and his twin brother Travis and their friend Greg were playing on the corner of Hollister Road and Turnpike Road in Santa Barbara. There were shopping centers being constructed, and the boys knew they weren't to cross the street and enter the construction site. 3-year-old Todd headed towards the dirt embankments of the construction site, and Greg followed, but Todd's twin brother Travis stayed back. About 20 minutes had gone by when Greg's mother saw her son across the street. She crossed the street to get Greg and brought him back home. When she returned home, she asked the 4-year-old Greg where Todd was. Greg was saying something about a bulldozer and a fire. Greg indicated that Todd might have gone over the turnpike overpass. Dogs picked up Todd's scent in the neighborhood around the railroad tracks and did indicate that the 3-year-old Todd had traveled over the turnpike overpass. All wells and septic tanks were combed through for days. Neighbors reported a bearded stranger in their area within the same time frame that 3-year-old Todd Collette disappeared. Witnesses claim the unidentified man had a black beard, light skin, and green eyes. He was wearing a navy blue blazer with an insignia of New Zealand on the front. Witnesses said he spoke good English, but he did have an accent. The witnesses said that their children was playing in their front yard when they spotted the man walking up to the children. The man approached the door asking for directions to the new houses. At the time, the neighborhood the 3-year-old Todd lived in and one of the surrounding areas, the houses were all brand new. Todd Collette's neighborhood was completely surrounded by new homes being constructed, as well as a big shopping center across the street. The unidentified man asked a woman for directions, and she pointed him into the direction that ended up being where 3-year-old Todd was last seen. The woman went on to claim that the man made her feel so uneasy that she brought her children indoors. They thought nothing of the incident until they later heard of Todd Collette's disappearance. 3-year-old Todd Collette has never been found. Foul play is suspected. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office at 805-681-4100.
Case 6. Welcome to Port Orange, Florida. It was on June 10th, 1975, when 12-year-old Susan DeSteel, a white female, vanished without a trace from Port Orange, Florida. 12-year-old Susan DeSteel was last seen in Port Orange, Florida, when she got off a school bus and was walking on a desert dirt road heading home on June 10th, 1975. 12-year-old DeSteel usually walked home with a friend, but on that day, DeSteel was alone. 12-year-old Susan DeSteel never arrived home and has never been heard from again. A witness reported seeing the 12-year-old DeSteel being forced into a dark blue Chevrolet van by two men. One of the abductors was about 22 years old and the other was about 30. The van had orange curtains and the word Aries on the side. The serial killer Gerald Stano confessed to Susan DeSteel's murder in 1982. Serial killer Stano confessed to the murders of 41 women in several states. In many cases, serial killer Stano led police to where his victims' bodies were. Stano stated he picked up 12-year-old Susan DeSteel on the day of her disappearance. Stano offered the 12-year-old DeSteel a ride to the Starlight Skate Center, which they both spent time there. After the 12-year-old DeSteel got into his vehicle, he strangled the 12-year-old. Stano led authorities to the place where he says he left her body, but the site had been built over and no remains were located. Stano pleaded guilty to several murders, but Stano was not charged in most of the cases he is alleged to have been involved in, including Susan DeSteel. Serial killer Stano also confessed to causing the death of Gail Joyner, who was never located, but is unclear whether he was actually involved in that case. 12-year-old Susan DeSteel is Stano's youngest presumed victim. Stano was executed in Florida in 1998. Foul play is suspected in Susan DeSteel's case due to the circumstances involved. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Port Orange Police Department at 386-506-5894.
Case 7. Welcome to Gainesville, Florida. It was on August 25th, 1989, is when 12-year-old Danny Randall Jackson, a white male, went missing from Gainesville, Florida. It was 8:30 p.m. is when witnesses claim they saw the 12-year-old Jackson outside a home just 2 houses down from his own. The last certain sight of the 12-year-old Jackson was by his brother and a friend who were at the neighbor's house. Jackson was in a man's car listening to a radio, and the man was outside watching the 12-year-old Jackson. The family believed that the 12-year-old Jackson was spending the night at a friend's home. When Jackson didn't come home the following day, a search of the neighborhood began. Then the police were called. The 12-year-old Jackson may have been spotted sometime later in a vehicle with two unidentified Caucasian males. The first male is described as being 20 to 22 years old at the time with a medium build. He had brown hair, which was pulled back in a ponytail. The second male is described as being 18 to 20 years old, 5'8", and 150 pounds. He had brown hair and a mustache. They were driving a 1978 or 1979 brown four-door Chevrolet Impala with a possible damage to the right front panel. The car has never been recovered by police. 12-year-old Danny Randall Jackson has never been located. Due to the circumstances of the case, foul play is suspected. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Gainesville Police Department at 352-393-6715.
Case 8. Welcome to Macon, Georgia. It was on August 15th, 1999, when 11-year-old Teresa Melissa Dean, a white female, vanished without a trace from Macon, Georgia. At 8 p.m. on August 15th, 1999, 11-year-old Dean was last seen walking down Lawrence Street near her family's single white trailer in Macon, Georgia. 11-year-old Teresa Melissa Dean has never been seen again. Dean said she was going to a friend's house to visit some puppies, but the 11-year-old Dean never arrived there. An extensive search of the area produced no clues as to Dean's whereabouts. Dean's mother, former boyfriend, Cody Landers, lived with the family in 1999. Landers was Dean's mother's fiance at the time, but they have since broken off their engagement. In October 2000, Landers was indicted on 7 child molestation charges involving 2 children. Landers openly admitted that he failed the polygraph test, which he took voluntarily shortly after the 11-year-old Dean's disappearance. But Landers claimed that the test was administered improperly. Landers called himself a suspect in Teresa Dean's case, but police never named him as a suspect. Landers is now in prison after pleading guilty to the child molestation charges. Landers has never been connected to Teresa Dean's case. No arrests have been made in the 11-year-old Teresa Dean's disappearance. Some investigators feel Teresa Dean's case may be connected to the abductions and murders in North Platte, Alabama in 2003 and Prattville, Alabama in 2001. The girls were all 11 years old. They all went missing during the month of August from trailer parks where they lived. There was construction going on near the site of each girl's disappearance. We talked about that the construction worker or workers were involved in these cases. Some of the related cases, the child victims were found deceased 7 weeks after she disappeared. The other case, her remains were not recovered for over 3 years. Those girls' murders remained unsolved. There is no hard evidence that links them to Teresa Dean's case. The 11-year-old Teresa Dean's case remains unsolved. Authorities believe foul play may have been involved in the Dean case. If you have any info concerning this case, please call Federal Bureau of Investigation at 478-745-1271 or the Twiggs County Sheriff's Office at 478-945-3357.
Okay, Olivia, is there anything you would like to add to any of these cases?
Yeah, well, it's just disturbing. It involves children. Unfortunately, you can't watch them 24/7, but, you got to kind of watch your kids. Don't let them go out there alone, especially in these times, because you never know who's watching. There's a lot of sick people out there. It's unfortunate,
Speaking of that, where I got the series, Children Who Never Made It Home, there used to be a website running with that name. And when I learned that it was going to be shut down, I copied and pasted all their cases they have on it. So when we do some of these podcasts, some of them cases comes from that website. And it was a very interesting website. A lot of information. As you know, a lot of they all dealt with child victims, and yeah, but it was an amazing sight, and so that's where I got the idea of having this series.
Why would they shut something like that down? That doesn't make sense.
Well, just
problem in this country with children disappearing.
Well, I understand that, but it was privately owned, and like I said, sometimes there's a lot of work involved. Sometimes it's the financial part, and it just depends. And but yeah,
you know what too? I gotta say too, a lot of people. I know you're proud of your children, but I have coworkers that do this. Don't post your kids in bikinis on beaches when they're underage, because some psycho could be watching. And social media is an issue too. They're putting their kids. I'm not. I don't know. I'm not into that.
Same way with my.
You don't know who's watching.
Same way on my grandkids. Everything is parental controlled. They have their own little network, and so if there's any TikToks, it only goes to them. Same way with my grandson is going to be 11 this month. He's in graphics. Well, he puts graphic cartoon characters together, puts music and narration and everything, and he posts that. Matter of fact, his last one, he's got like 36,000 views on it. It's unreal.
Wow.
It's unreal.
Well, my point is, I understand what they say. Well, it's only going to friends. Well, that's fine. It's going to your friends, but you don't know who your friends' friends are that might be looking at it. And,
well,
the one girl, she had a picture of her daughter and a friend, and the friend's mother was like, "Who's the creeper in the water watching the two girls?" You got to watch. Watch what you do.
Yeah, well, that's why I say it's all.
I know you're proud of your kids, but personally, I don't want to see it. It's not interesting to me. So she's in the water. Wow. But people are like that. I don't know. I just tend to keep my life private. I don't put pictures of me and him on Facebook because it's nobody's business, Yeah.
Okay, I would like to thank Olivia for being on the show tonight. A special thanks for our listeners and viewers for tuning in, for y'all have been so kind. I have a quote for you all. Never lose hope. Tomorrow could be the day you have been waiting for. Author unknown. Always remember, folks, that if you ever get bored with nothing to do, well, take a walk deep into the woods. You might be surprised at what you might find. That's the end of our MJA podcast, this series, Children Who Never Made It Home. This has been episode 7, part 7, 8 Missing Children. We say to all of you, good night from Morrisonville, New York, stashed away in the Adirondack Mountains.
What does it look like in heaven? Is it peaceful? Is it free like they say? Does the sun shine bright forever? Have your fears and your pain gone away? Here on earth it feels see